everybody, and welcome to another edition of This Week in Clean Tech, the 15-minute roundup of the biggest stories in climate and clean energy each week. Today is Halloween, Friday, October 31, 2025. We have a returning guest on the horn. Shannon Osaka from the Washington Post is standing by. I'm Factory This content director Paul Gerke, joined as always by Cleantech commentator Mike Casey of Tigercomm. Mike, I've got a special costume this year. I am a father for Halloween. And for every Halloween henceforth, those of you watching the video version of this is my sweet little Gemma Rose. She is 1 week old today at the time of this taping and sleeping peacefully for one show only. Just for you, Mike.
I want to encourage every listener to switch to the YouTube vid. It's you got to check it out. First off, Paul's got an ear-to-ear grin. And second, before the show, he was saying some clearly rookie father things. Like, he knew he would be fine doing this because his daughter's nap time was, quote, scheduled for this time. So, and departing from fantasy into concerning reality, Mr. Gerke, while you were out last week, we got to talk about Brian Mendez. So here's our problem.
Okay.
The boy wants a clothing allowance. We say no. He wants a star trailer, even though he's behind the scenes. We say no. He wants a $50 million jet like Kristi Noem got. We say no. So the next thing we do, he's calling me from Paris. He got freaking arrested in that Louvre heist, jewelry heist. And so Clarion sends him an attorney. He starts running his mouth. Now he's before a court. Like, I don't know what we're going to do with this guy. I think this is a case of acting out. So,
Mendez always running with the wrong crowd. Ever since he started wearing that Euro trash goatee, I think we should have seen the Louvre heist written all over his face then. And
Jeremiah called it. He was like, you look like you're coming out from somewhere else, but Mendez denied it, but we knew better. All right. Anyway, listen, hey, I want to give a listener shout out to John Seberg, who said he does not mind your unshaven appearance, Paul, at all.
All right.
He's not bothered by it at all. So you can continue to grub your way through these episodes.
Thanks, John. I did shave for this one. I was overdue a shower before this show. I had all sorts of bodily fluids on me that I hadn't had in a long time or ever. But I did. Thank you. Appreciate that. That's really nice of you. We always love to hear the feedback from you guys. If you take something out of the show, if you want to give us a hard time, we're here for it. Just send us a message. My email address is paul.gerke@clarionevents.com. I'll be honest with you, I'm not really reading that right now, though. I kind of got some other stuff going on. So maybe reach out to Mike for the next few weeks. We do have some stories, though, to talk about. And, Mike, I'll be honest with you, man, I'm a little unglued. Spent a lot of time in the last week, sort of up all night taking care of a newborn and in and out of the hospital. So if there's been a major breaking news story in the energy space and I sound completely out of left field on something, feel free to crack the whip. But let's get into it. Story number one. What do we got?
Yeah, and I'll just say that Jeremiah guy, he did a pretty good job. He has almost as good a hair as you.
Dude, he's got better lettuce than me. His hair's all over the place, but in a fun way.
Yeah, it's very stylish. It's kind of Johnny Depp-like, but he
came on, man.
He put some wood on the ball. He came in, he did a good job.
Good, man. I love to hear that.
Story number one, Ben Geeman, Axios, DOE's latest move from the most direct yet to smooth data centers path.
So your boy Chris Wright, who you often call Chris Wrong on this show, under the Department of Energy, is doing something. Yeah, I know. He's doing something that I think everybody's been asking for quite some time. It's actually kind of good to see. Sent a letter over to FERC urging the commission to speed up interconnection. But here's the rub. It's not interconnection of generation. It's interconnection of large loads, data centers. Of course, with that, some power sources serving them. But it seems like the impetus here, Mike, is serving the God in the machine and not necessarily bringing our electricity prices down. That letter proposes policy ideas for considering how these new demand sources, these large load customers alongside their accompanying generation, and how exactly we would require such loads to foot the bill of any necessary grid upgrades, which is usually a big hang-up. Strategy firm Capstone LLC, they took a look at the plan. They view it as a positive for nuclear plant owners pursuing co-lo deals with data centers, as well as gas turbine manufacturers and on-site power technology companies. Mike, you notice I didn't say wind or solar or batteries or anything like that.
You did not. You did talk about electricity prices, and that is the story Shannon Osaka is going to come talk to us about. And I got to give her credit. She was a week ahead of the New York Times, which followed her. The New York Times followed Shannon Osaka in its piece dissecting prices, but we did her. The proposal encourages FERC to fast-track projects that are curtailable and dispatchable, meaning they can just adjust or shift energy use depending on the conditions. This flexibility could be enabled by technologies ranging from battery storage and natural gas to biofuels and geothermal, or heat batteries, I want to add. The proposal has drawn rare bipartisan support, but industry and analysts note that the letter outlines only broad principles, leaving many key details unresolved. Paul, story number 2.
Story number 2, a past This Week in Cleantech guest, Alexander Kaufman, good guy. Heat map news titled Simpler Solar Regulations would save Americans $1.2 trillion. That sounds nice, Mike. We got mouths to feed.
Totally. In the U.S., it costs about $28K to put a 7-kilowatt system on your rooftop. I know we're at the start of that journey now that my state allows no money down solar leasing. So in Australia, it's around $4,000. In Germany, it's just $10,000 after a simple 2-page form. Costs are driven up by state and local rules, along with homeowners associations that make it hard for Americans to go solar with too many permits, inspections, and connection hurdles. Permit Power, a nonprofit advocating for fewer restrictions on renewables, proposed that states adopt policies used in other countries, like fast online permitting, remote photo or video inspections, and automatic grid connections for homes with smart inverters that safely manage power flow. If the states made these changes, 18 million more homeowners could afford rooftop solar. That saves about $1,600 a year on electricity bills, $56,000 on average over 25 years on a home. That adds up to a total of $1.2 trillion in national savings off high electricity prices. Paul.
Mike, I think you said an important word in that little bit there where you said is an S word, states. Because that's the problem with living in the United States when it comes to something like this, because there's no federal edict like there is in Germany or something that sort of outlines the process and what it should look like when you're trying to put solar panels or batteries on your home. Here, it's a state permitting thing. There's like 50 different sets of rules, plus DC, plus depending on where you are. Even individual municipalities can sort of have their own regulations. New York's a great example there, where depending on where you're trying to put it, batteries might be limited use. You might have to have a certain architectural design depending on where you're putting stuff. Minnesota still requires in-person paperwork and monthly zoning meetings. Illinois relies on paper forms. Multiple agencies have to sign off on this stuff. So it's not like it's just affording the cost of solar and batteries, which the cost of both is obviously coming down and continues to do so. It's getting this stuff up and put together in a timely way where I think the homeowners too also feel like they're not being taken advantage of, because door-to-door solar, from as far as I know, Mike, is still the way most of this stuff gets put up. And I don't make a habit out of trusting door-to-door salesmen or letting people into my home very often. There's got to be a better way. Mike, story number 3.
Okay, Antoine Gara and Malcolm Moore from the Financial Times. U.S. government and Westinghouse strike $80 billion nuclear reactor deal. All right, guaranteed to get the hearts throbbing of LinkedIn's many nuclear bros. Yeah. We're giving you one to you guys.
There's your bird call, nuclear bros. We're summoning you. Caw, caw. We're making up numbers again, huh, Mike? 80 billion. We're just throwing B's and T's on stuff. U.S. government reaching this deal with Westinghouse's owners, Brookfield Asset Management and Camco, to build a fleet of nuclear reactors. Everyone wants nuclear now, and it's always a few years away. It continues to be so. This investment, Mike, though, would fund 8 AP1000 power plants, or a mix of larger facilities and smaller modular reactors if they're available. That funding is going to come from a $550 billion U.S.-Japan trade agreement that sets aside up to $100 billion for Westinghouse projects. Washington is going to help Westinghouse secure sites and deal with regulatory approvals, may also offer loan guarantees to support the company's efforts. The deal includes a profit-sharing mechanism that could give Washington up to a 20% stake in Westinghouse. This is important. And the right to require a future public listing if the company's value exceeds $30 billion by 2029. Mike, I've said this before on the show. The United States is communist now. We are a communist country. We are giving away 20% of capitalist endeavor to the state for the betterment of the state. That is communism. We are communists now. Tell me I'm wrong.
My friend, I'm just not going to go there. I'm going to just come back to the facts of the case. Trump has directed the U.S. nuclear industry to fast-track both large and small reactors to reach 400 gigawatts of capacity by 2050. Never mind the fact that it takes decades to build a nuclear plant. The policy has boosted the sector and helped companies raise billions, but there have been concerns that Washington has been reluctant to underwrite the risks of construction. So, not to bring up an inconvenient recollection, let us remember Georgia's Vogtle plant. The last two reactors faced years of delays and costs that climbed to more than twice the original $114 billion budget, forcing Westinghouse into Chapter 11 bankruptcy in 2017. The company insists that its AP1000 reactor is proven, replicable design that can now be deployed at scale. But I just want to point out the contrast. We are our taxpayer money is being used to bend over backwards for a technology that scales with massive cost overruns and delays of its own making, and it's really expensive, and we're going to cater to that. But what we're going to do is throw lots of bureaucratic paperwork obstacles to the homeowner who wants to cut their energy prices. It's dumber than owl crap. I mean, that's just the bottom line. Paul, our fourth story.
Story number 4, Zach Hansen from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. It's titled, Georgia has lost $2.9 billion in clean energy projects amid federal pullback. Report says, you don't say, Mike.
All right. Since a certain guy retook the White House, more than $24 billion worth of EV, battery, and renewable energy projects have been canceled this year, according to the nonpartisan group E2. Georgia alone has lost 3 projects totaling over $2.9 billion in promised investment and 1,077 anticipated jobs. Hey, man. We don't need. We have too many good paying jobs in America.
We don't need jobs.
Yeah,
where we're going, we don't need jobs.
Since the Inflation Reduction Act took effect in 2022, Georgia announced 35 clean energy projects representing nearly $12.9 billion in planned investment and 17,380 estimated jobs. I mean, just these aren't Grubhub. This is not Uber driving. Nothing wrong with those jobs, but these are like high quality jobs that don't get outsourced. But since Trump's tax bill rolled back many of the incentives, E2 reports that project cancellations have hit Republican districts hardest, costing them about $14.6 billion in investment, more than 19,000 jobs compared with $7.8 billion and 7,040 jobs in Democratic areas. Paul, your thoughts?
I just want to add one thing, and I could go on and on about this. I want to just point out the fact that we're talking about investments in red or blue areas where I live, Mike, I don't think of myself as living in a red or blue area. My neighbors have a Trump flag. I'm obviously a critic, as often on this show. I don't think that people think about living in red or blue areas. This hurts people, period. This brings up electricity prices, period. This is bad for the economy of these communities, period. I don't want to hear about which way a place voted and whether they deserve it or not. This is the future of our new economy in this country, and we're stepping all over ourselves to shoot it in the foot unnecessarily. Let's bring the guest in, Mike. Story number 5.
Well, for hopefully a boost of optimism, we've got returning this week in Cleantech guest, Shannon Osaka from the Washington Post. The real reason electricity prices are rising, and it's not data centers. Shannon, I just got to give you hats off. You beat the New York Times by a week. I know that used to matter a lot, but just saying, hey, New York Times, if you came on this show more like David Gellis, you might stop losing to the Post. Like, I'm just saying, like, your fame would rise, people would come to you more, and you wouldn't get beat so often. But anyway, Shannon, if people have not read this awesome story, what's the main takeaway?
It's super interesting. So Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory did this big study. They looked at electricity prices over the last 5 years, 2019 to 2024. And one of the big themes they found was that load growth or demand growth for electricity does not necessarily lead to higher prices. In fact, what they found was that states with the highest load growth actually were seeing real drops in electricity prices, that is adjusted for inflation. And there's a lot of interesting reasons why that is. One of the main reasons that I talked about with the authors is just that a lot of electricity is fixed costs. We're paying for the poles, we're paying for the wires, we're paying for the transmission lines. And when you're spreading those fixed costs around more kilowatt hours, more megawatt hours, your rates are actually going to go down. There's the numerator, which is, the overall cost of your system, and the denominator, which is how much, megawatt hours, kilowatt hours you're pumping through the system. If those things are increasing at the same rate, your rates are not necessarily going to change, even if demand is going up.
So the demand going up in this instance is not necessarily driven by Joe consumer, although we are electrifying everything and AC load is greater and greater, it seems like each summer. I know that we're going to have to reconductor a bunch of power lines at some point to get to the electric future that it appears we're headed, Shannon. But in your reporting, how much of this is expedited by the fact that 4 or 5 hyperscalers want to, create God in the machine, and we're all going to foot a bit of the bill for it?
Well, what they saw in their study is that it really depends on where you are. So if you are in the PJM interconnection grid operated area, we're thinking about Maryland, we're thinking about West Virginia, places like that. They are reaching the point where their data center load is outpacing how quickly they can build. And so they are seeing additional costs on their electricity rates, specifically in about the last year, like summer 2024 to now. But if you look kind of at the previous 5 years, and if you look across the whole country, you're not necessarily seeing that. California has a bunch of data centers. Their load has actually been going down overall. So it's just a more complicated story than I think we have seen in the headlines of, AI data centers bad, higher electricity prices. Can still be true in definitely some locations.
All right, Shannon, I'm gonna test your willingness to come back on the show with this question. All right. So I'm going to call you out for what I think you are being excessively kind in a line. You say, politicians have been bickering over the extent to which renewables, such as wind and solar, raise rates. Now, hold on. Here's my question. Not the we the witness, but is there a single serious person with any private sector experience or actually analyze these things, not a professional BSer like Chris Wrong, who actually says to you, renewables are driving up costs? Is there a single one you heard? Not Chip Roy, not Chris Wrong, but actually knowledgeable people, serious people with an eye on the market?
Okay, well, here's what I would say is that I think there are serious people who make arguments about, for example, rooftop solar and net metering increasing prices in some locations, right? So if you're giving consumers who have rooftop solar big subsidies, that can sort of wig out prices for the rest of folks. In terms of utility scale, I think that when we talk to serious analysts, they will say renewables, wind and solar are not bringing up prices.
So that would be
no!
There you go.
Just want to make a point.
In a roundabout way, and no.
I'm just making a point. You were being nice. I'm just saying because
it's a straw man.
There's a baby in the room, Mike.
Earmuffs, Gemma, earmuffs. Listen. I find like it ends up as a straw man argument, Shannon, because it's about infrastructure costs at the end of the day. And if you're building a turbine or if you're building a reconductored, set of poles and wires to transmission lines. It's infrastructure costs is infrastructure costs. It's the same part of those fixed parts of our bills that you talked about a moment ago. Your top number and your bottom number, and the more electricity in the system and the more consumers, the better it is for all of us.
Yeah, and it's a crazy situation where we have the generators of our electricity becoming heavily polarized in this country. I mean, it's a crazy situation where people will say, I just don't want my electrons to come from wind and solar. Why would it matter?
You want the higher prices.
Yeah.
You want to pay more. Okay, yeah, no problem. Sure.
Right. And it was interesting. One thing that the study did come to again is that some states with renewable portfolio standards, states with standards have seen rates raise more than states without those renewable standards. That, I don't think, if you're a policymaker in those states, I don't think you're seeing that as a big issue. You're saying we put this standard into place because we're worried about carbon emissions and we want to accelerate this transition probably a little bit faster than the market would. I think that's a perfectly fine outcome for those policymakers.
And I'd also add, like, having been dating myself, I know you young people weren't around back then, but I was actually part of a lot of these renewable portfolio standards back when I was y'all's age. And I can tell you that the arguments we were making then was for jobs, which we delivered, tax revenue, which we delivered. And I just want the listeners to note that EEI can amass some appearance of seriousness, and they do make this death spiral argument, which they've made very well in California. That's why, at least in theory, Governor Newsom has imperiled his chances in the Democratic primary by wrecking the solar industry, insulation industry and state. That said, there is also a very cogent argument that net metering is good for utilities and good for other ratepayers because it holds down costs. It doesn't wear out the grid as much. Just want to note that.
Oh, I know. I have talked to many experts on net metering. You can hear the different arguments until your head spins, and you can't. I think it's hard to argue that net metering in California has not helped the state dramatically lower its emissions.
Yeah, and grow jobs.
Great point, Shannon.
And
Really appreciate you having on the show this
Thank
week.
you.
We got to get to our Cleantecher of the week. This week, Cleantecher of the week is Jonathan Shaw, the CEO of Nuru. Under his leadership, Nuru commissioned the Democratic Republic of Congo's first commercial mini solar grid. That was back in 2017. They've done 3 more since then that are powering communities across the country. That company currently building the largest solar mini grid in sub-Saharan Africa. Keep an eye on Africa. The more I read, Mike, the more I learn about the incredible stuff that's happening there and how this new world economy is going to be stopping by sub-Saharan Africa sooner than you or I realize it. The world that this little girl grows up in, we're going to have a very different perspective on that part of the world. But congratulations to Jonathan Shaw, CEO of Nuru, our Cleantecher of the week.
Yeah, absolutely. And we want to thank Shannon for letting us put her very kindly on the kind hot seat on this question, which she was so nice. She was very nice about spanning the divide. But we want to thank our wonderful producer, Brian Mendez. We hope we will get him out of jail in Paris.
Yep.
Alex Peterson and Claire Quirin for gathering these stories.
That's about it. I guess you, Shannon Osaka.
Yeah, you're supposed to. This is where you thank
you already
Shannon
said thanks. I'm very thankful. Shannon, you're great.
I thank her for putting up with us.
She didn't say anything terrible to my daughter either. Oh, excuse me. That burp was not me. If you're just listening to the audio version, that was the little one. Oh, big yawn.
At least not this. At least not this week.
This time, I have an excuse for this show only. Sorry for shaking the rust off, but thanks for having me back to say hi, Mike. It's nice to connect with you. You guys can check out the stories we talk about every week. They're in the links in the episode description and the article post on Factor This. We'll catch you next time. Say bye, Gemma Rose. Say bye.
Right. New York Times, come on! You'll stop getting beat by Shannon Osaka.